So in the first video, I covered the first 5 breakages to look out for in an Agile team. So number 6 is no team collaboration. The rationalization here is just tell people what to do. It's quicker. So yeah, that may be quicker at the beginning for a week or two, because people then comply or they get on with the thing you told them to do. But that doesn't build a good team or foundation for the team and the customer over time. Whether you're agile or not, collaboration can really be very powerful within a team to kind of get things done and have people expend their effort and get a good solution out at the very end. So agile principle would include self-organizing, and that really kind of goes back to a ownership through involvement approach. So self-organizing can go really well, can go really bad. It depends on how well the team can self-organize. But if you have a self-organizing person on the team that can actually lead the way, then you can get a very good result, or a much better result as a team. And basically, I like the idea here. The premise of this is that if we have people add their piece or their idea to the solution, it becomes theirs. If it's a customer, it becomes their solution for them. They want to buy it. They're invested. If it's a team member, they kind of feel ownership over the solution too, because their idea is part of the whole kind of solution. So the intent is to get people's ideas on the table and have the team figure what they're going to do with that, and make sure some of the ideas are actually in the final version, so that person has a part of their self-worth and their kind of value on the table in the final solution. So works good with management, works good with the team members, works good with the customer also. So how do we get people to collaborate? Well, there are many things you can do to get people to collaborate, many skills you may have as a manager, as a team leader to do that. Here's one example of that, one maybe a way to kind of get started. We have a backlog here. The team members in an agile team typically grab an item off the backlog. Grabbing means I'm not told what to do. I volunteer to kind of grab that particular feature and do it. And by grabbing it, by taking it or volunteering for it, then basically I have some ownership. I'm publicly committing to go work on that particular item. Now, before we actually go work on the item, second question to ask is to confirm understanding. And that is that you grabbed ABC, which is great, but clarify what you've grabbed and explain back to the team how you're going to work on that, or what's involved, or some of the kind of key issues about that feature. And their confirmed understanding, their explanation back, helps them clarify what they're going to grab and maybe look for issues and problems to resolve they may not have been aware of. But secondly, their ideas and the team's ideas are then kind of shared on the table, and because those ideas are then shared, the team becomes committed and involved in the discussion. So it is a simple way to kind of start the conversation, to get them involved in the discussion and resolve kind of key issues at the same time with that person. So number 7, don't deliver the solution in increments. Our project is too large and complex to do that. So a lot of teams, particularly if they're doing big solutions or big projects, will decide that they want to be agile and do daily stand-ups, but they don't want to do or cannot do the incremental delivery that would be part of Agile. And just doing daily stand-ups is not really Agile. Anybody can do daily stand-ups if you're Agile or not. Even waterfall people do daily stand-ups. That doesn't make them Agile. One of the key issues of Agile is to get feedback on the thing you're building. Let's discuss some ways you can do that on a bigger project. So what can we do in the situation where there is a big project and people feel they can't be agile because they can't break it up into pieces and deliver those pieces? So the first thing I would do is to look at the customer's needs and the priority or the sequence of their needs. Maybe they can give you some insight about if they were to have features A, B, C first, they could actually use them. For example, if you were going to do a database change and a new system had a new database, they could spend their time translating or migrating the old data to the new data without actually doing the GUI part of it or using the system correctly downstream. And so maybe that is the first batch of features you provide. Maybe second batch of features is for the power user, because the power user wants to kind of have the hot key sequence. They're going to do power commands, and that's going to sit batch number 2. And then maybe batch features number 3 is to have a GUI for the regular user to kind of learn how to use it. So there could be a whole bunch of dependencies and suggested sequence they could recommend to you to kind of give you an idea how to break up your bigger system into pieces for them, either to deliver to them to use or to deliver them to give feedback on and figure out the likelihood of that particular feature working out correctly. Also realize that in Agile, not every deliverable has to be production use. It could be a beta use, it could be a prototype. It doesn't have to be a fully tested, pretty, and usable system. You actually could do a mock-up in MATLAB or Excel, and maybe the data calculations you're going to do in a GUI would end up being in MATLAB or Excel to begin with, and you figure out if that's correct or not. Maybe you're doing a prototype on a model. You build a physical model of something on a small scale, run the software on it, and make sure the software functions somehow. And therefore, later on, you can take the feedback and add to the bigger hardware system. So keep in mind that the idea is feedback on a thing, not feedback or deliverable of a production-worthy feature to the customer. And thirdly, making sure your release plans are maybe shorter than longer. If you have a release plan of a year to have all features done by the year end, maybe you want to have a release plan that is every 3 months, maybe 4 points of the release plan over a whole year. Maybe based upon the customer needs and what you are building, you kind of get into a first version release plan, second version, third and fourth version, and then bit by bit you build your plan over the year and get feedback every time you deliver something. So again, I think a bit of ingenuity and involvement of some of the users can give you some insights of where the thing's going to break up. I would say if you're really not doing a feedback loop on something, either a mock-up of it, or a final version, then you're really not Agile yet. Just meeting daily stand-ups is not going to be really qualified for Agile. There's a little bit of it, but even waterfall teams do daily stand-ups. So here's some further examples. Screen mock-ups, features with a GUI, features without the GUI. Maybe they're command level features you're going to type into a keyboard versus click on a screen. Workflow mock-ups, they could be in PowerPoint, Excel, pick your tool of choice. They're going to show a workflow, even pencil and paper. Calculations, bug fixes. Maybe the customer wants particular bugs fixed first in their first increment, and then features in their second and third increment. Reports, maybe they're happy with data with no reports at the beginning, just kind of data on the screen, and then bit by bit you add reports to that over time. Maybe they're just happy with data. Maybe they have a database or a system providing data internally, and they just want to see it, okay? And therefore you have a database screen or a database dump from the system that just kind of basically takes all the measures of the system and then gives them anything. That's kind of the first version they could deal with and use in their project. So number 8 breakage point is no burndown chart or velocity, giving up or putting up with ugly data. So we are working as fast as we can, so why track status? The graph does not look great anyways. So a couple of reasons why people stop tracking the burndown charts and velocity of their projects. Again, the idea is we have a work amount to going to do on the y-axis here, and we have a time scale on the x-axis, and the idea is to track how fast we're going to know whether we are going fast enough or too slow or whatever to hit the final deadline at the very end, or the end of the sprint. So some teams, when I see their burndown charts, they were doing great for the first few days, tracking it maybe 2 days, and they stopped because the data was going up. And so they couldn't fix it. They knew for sure they're overcommitted and the graph would not go down, and therefore they decided to abandon tracking because the graph would not go the right direction towards the endpoint. So in that case, they have basically ugly data and they don't put up with it, they just abandon ship on the project. So what can we do about the no burndown chart or velocity issue? Firstly, I would say recognize that tracking data is actually fairly complicated or takes a lot of practice to do correctly, and that it is easy to build bad charts. It is much harder to build accurate charts. An accurate chart needs clearly defined user stories, and not ambiguous ones. It needs clearly defined tasks. It needs clearly defined definition of done. And when we have these clearly defined, which takes a bit of refinement to do on a team, then the points make some sense. We can then declare that 10 points were earned or were tracked down, and the graph becomes accurate. If we don't have clearly defined definitions for anything, then we don't know for sure whether we're done with something, and therefore we don't know whether the graph going down or up is even accurate. So I would say be patient and just practice over time to figure out what the word done actually means, and then bit by bit the data will become more useful. Also, the Burndown charts become a very good way to uncover stinky issues. This is a stinky issue here where the diagram goes back up and up at the very end again. And so if you have a project that is in difficulty and the data is accurate, the diagram will then reflect the difficulty. And because people don't often want to see difficulty visible or make their difficulties visible to the management team, then they tend to not want to have a burn down chart that would show that. Here's a good example of this. The team is doing great. The data is actually very accurate. I checked it with the team. They did a great job on that. But the diagram goes up maybe halfway through, and then it goes down as they do work and goes back up again. And so the management team was saying that the issue is the diagram is caused by Agile. Okay? Too many meetings, too many collaboration events, okay? Too many ceremonies, etc. Therefore, the diagram goes up. And therefore, don't do Agile. The team was saying that Agile is done very well and the data is actually very accurate, and actually was very accurate. And the issue is management. Management would come in on day 5 and then change the priorities. Or they'll come in at the very end and say, you're not done yet, we have new features for you. So because management could get involved in the team at these daily stand-ups or the sprint review activities, then management would then change its mind and say, well, no, do this or do that or whatever. And of course the team would not have a good defense mechanism. They would then agree to this and the diagram would go back up again. So in this case we had ugly data that was accurate and had to be then resolved what the issue was. The resolution was to tell management, I got to do this, that yes, the team is doing a great job on Agile, that it is very accurate, and whereas in the pre-waterfall days they would get involved every 3 months and then give their suggestions, now they recognized there was a chance to give their input daily, and they did so. And when they give their input daily with their new idea or new priority, and the team would accept that or work on that, the diagram would then go up and things would not get finished. So it ended up becoming a diagram that reflected management's behavior, which when pointed out nicely, and I was very nice, they fixed it and they did a great job. So it wasn't a big issue to resolve, but it did require some interpretation of the diagram and some discussions with management about how they could change their behavior with the team. So number 9, no retrospective data collected or acted upon. There's no time to collect data or investigate another approach for fill in the blank. This could be an approach for a better backlog, doing design, better testing, better test cases, better use of the tool, better collaboration, better daily stand-ups, you name it. There's no time to improve whatever the thing is. I think one of the amazing parts of Agile, when done correctly, is the feedback loop on how we're doing stuff. And the whole point is to avoid getting to a major problem area where these things are breaking. Actually, the previous 8 things I've mentioned could all been identified and fixed if teams had done more of the retrospective activity. But actually teams don't do this, most teams don't do this, and therefore they do dig themselves into major problems, not because they're bad people, just because they don't actively assess what went on objectively and they don't fix those things. So it's built into the whole system to get the feedback and then take corrective action. So let's look at the things we could do to maybe address this and make it a bit easier for the team to make progress on their issues. Firstly, about time. So obviously everybody has a limit of time they have to spend on things. If we take a regular 2-week sprint, that's 80 calendar hours, work hours, If we say 4 hours of that is spent on a retrospective, that is a fairly small percentage of time to spend on fixing stuff. And actually, if we fix a few things here and there over time, we get the time back. If we can make a backlog a little bit better, or a test case a bit better, or the tool usage a bit better, we can gain that time on a regular basis back on the project. So a little bit of investment at the beginning on a few issues here and there can really kind of pay back on a regular basis over time. We might decide to keep the half day every 2 weeks as is, or make it a bit more, and then just kind of get more time back as we fix things. So that would be the first thing I would do. Another reason that teams don't fix their issues on a regular basis is because they become numb to them, they become used to them. So maybe the backlog is broken at the beginning and they're going to get used to it. They can have a workaround to spend more time on coding, or there are no test cases, they're going to get used to it, they allocate more time for testing. Or they don't do daily stand-ups particularly well, they get used to it, they allocate a half a day for their daily stand-up because they're poorly managed. So they become used to the issues over time. The fix here is to look at the time actually wasted if never resolved. If we spend an hour on every daily stand-up over time, what does that cost us? If we spend a half a day on the backlog review because the backlog's terrible, what does that cost us? If we spend 2 days extra testing every other sprint because the test cases don't exist, what does that cost us? So a quick calculation of this particular problem and the time wasted on that particular problem or with that problem over time can give you a motivation for, if we fixed it one time, we would save all that time downstream. If it is an issue with management, if for some reason or you think the management has said, don't fix anything or don't waste your time on it, you want to kind of share the data with management. That if we had a bit better backlog or a bit better kind of tool setup, or a bit better workflow between the testing tool and Jira, or a bit better collaboration with the customer and what we're doing from a backlog perspective, or more access to the product owner, then we can save 5 hours a week on average. And 5 hours a week over the course of maybe 60 weeks or 50 weeks or whatever would buy you back this amount of time. So do some subtle calculations, make them conservative, and then either use that data yourself for motivation or going to share that with the management team and going to get their input on that. Some teams are unsure or scared of what to change. Unsure means they're not going to try anything new because it could break Agile, or scared to kind of fail. They're not going to modify the backlog because it may go bad, or they're not going to write test cases because it may go bad, or they're not going to fix the daily stand-up because people may not like what we've been doing before. And so in this case, they're kind of scared to change something because it may be embarrassing or have to kind of step out of the norm, or they could get criticized or whatever. This is basically a common issue of introverted people that want to kind of hunker down and keep the head down and avoid having it chopped off. Again, it is the essence of not being agile in a team. We need a better, more charismatic or more open Scrum Master is going to encourage people to speak up and discuss issues like this. What I like about Agile is if you actually make a mistake, if you do a backlog modification or you do a new way to do a test case, and it is a disaster, if it is a disaster, you actually can revert back within 2 weeks. You only have to put up with that change for 2 weeks or less and go back to what you were doing before. Okay, so you could be agile, actually be agile. Okay, so if you do something bad or it doesn't work out, I think it's great. You tried something, it may actually have worked out and you get the benefit. Or if it didn't work out, you are agile and therefore go back to where you were before. You're agile and then try something different. So I think just being fearful of a change or fearful of a criticism is basically underlying not agile. Scared to mention the problem, particularly if teams are overcommitted and it involves a customer or a manager. They may not actually say the words, we're totally overcommitted because our estimates fields are blank and we have no idea what we're doing. That may be embarrassing to say that. In that case, you want to find somebody on the team that is an able spokesperson. One of the things a project manager or a scrum master should be doing, and the reason they've been selected for that position, is to talk to people about issues in a way that is understandable. And therefore, you want to make sure you have a team member somewhere, somehow, that can speak up correctively and diplomatically for the team and have the issue resolved. Unable to sell the solution to the team or management. So you may have a very good idea yourself, but you don't know how to convince the team on the idea. You may be belaboring it every week, like we should do better requirements or do better stand-ups or do a test case traceability. And the team is going to get bored hearing you say the words. Reset and stop. What you're saying is not working, obviously, but it may be a good idea. Reset and reframe in the terms of the problem. What problem do the team members see themselves or management see, and how does your solution fit that? So they get annoyed working the weekend on the backlog review, and your idea is to fix the backlog. So you've reframed the solution in terms of the weekend issue. Okay, basically making sure they understand the connection between what you're suggesting and the new thing. Or you try something out for 2 weeks. Say we'll go back to where we were before if it's a failure after 2 weeks or after 1 week. Or take one user story and do that better. See if it makes any sense. If it does, try other user stories. So make a more incremental approach than a big bang approach to the backlog or whatever the change actually is. Number 10, focusing on labels and dogma and not being agile. Our transformational coach insists that we call our team a tribe. Otherwise, we're just an old-fashioned traditional team. This is complete nonsense. A complete and utter nonsense. If you see this going on, A, be aware of it, and B, try to maybe change it or fix it or look at intent versus the labels scheme. It doesn't make any difference if your team is called a tribe or a fiefdom or a team or a vacation party. It doesn't make any difference. You have work to do. Do work, okay? Agile can help you get work done and give you feedback. It doesn't matter what you call the team. Pick the label that the team likes the best. If they love the word tribe, then go with tribe, okay? If they don't like the word tribe, it makes no difference to them, then don't get hung up on tribe. But just the saying that the name makes a big difference to how we perform, I think is kind of irrelevant. So the problem often comes out when there are particular brands of Agile being used, and the brands of Agile have their own inbuilt language. And if you do a Google on the word Agile approach, you get a long list. Here's an example list. And the ones I marked in red typically have their own language, okay? Or they really care about their own language and keywords they have to use. For example, holistic, adaptive, unified, dynamic, extreme, feature-driven or something-driven, Scrum Barn, and DAD, and even Safe over here. And my favorite is the tribes, squads, and chapters and guilds of Spotify Agile. So they all say the same thing in essence, becoming Agile, and they actually all refer to pretty much a Scrum approach as the foundation, but they do get hung up on their language, as if you have to use their language to kind of be correct and any other language is incorrect. Or they're going to make you feel like you must use their language, otherwise you're not doing it the correct way or as well as you could be doing it. It makes absolutely no difference whatsoever the label you call it. I would say pick the label you like and go with the one you'll do or the one that helps your team going to do a better job. Okay? Whatever it is okay. The essence of Agile is to get feedback on the thing you're building and how you're building it. So in summary, I think the bottom line is focus on the intent of Agile. That means periodic feedback. I think if you abandon that, then you really have abandoned Agile. It's not difficult to go back to that, so don't feel bad if you've done that. You can fix it. Realize why we have these things in Agile. I put also in Agile. These things are in Agile, but they're in other things that have gone back thousands of years too. Agile was not the first thing to come up with the idea of estimation or planning or backlogs. These notions have been around for a long, long time in industry or any industry. If you don't know why they're there or your team doesn't know why they're there, then explain to them the benefits to them. Why are they doing these things in the team? Again, there are other things to add to it, but at least go from the label, this one here, to the benefit to you, and understand the benefit or the intent of that particular area or practice in the team. If you have gone downstream or gone downhill with this kind of slippery slide approach, and things have got bad, you might be due for an objective check to see how you're doing. Get somebody that is not part of your team that understands Agile or understands software or projects and give you some objective feedback. Maybe it's time to recognize where you actually stand objectively. And then don't be scared to add practices to your implementation to improve performance. Agile is the framework, like a beginning point. It's actually a very good beginning point, but just a beginning point nevertheless. So there are other things like traceability, design, risk management, peer reviews. The list goes on forever. Go to the World Wide Web. They're all up there to add to your project, maintain Agile, and get a better result. In summary, care needs to be taken not to downgrade Agile by slowly deleting key steps. These downgrades can initially go unnoticed, but can add up to major schedule and quality problems over time. Thanks for watching the video. For more help on these topics or your Agile implementation, please see the links below.